On the night of June 7th, 2021, a chilling call was placed to 911. My wife and son have been shot badly. The voice on the other end belonged to Alex Murdaugh, a well-known figure in South Carolina's Lowcountry. But when first responders arrived, they found more than just a crime scene. They found a mystery that would shake the community to its core. Because what lay beyond that 911 call was not just a tragedy. It was the beginning of the fall of a dynasty. A sprawling estate, 1,700 acres of open land, a name that carried weight for generations, a legacy built on power. But behind the gates of the Murdaugh property, darkness was brewing. How could a family that had controlled the legal system for nearly a century find itself at the center of a double murder? One by one, the secrets began to unravel. And soon, the Murdaugh name, once untouchable, would become synonymous with scandal, deception, and death. Was this the act of an outsider with a vendetta, or was something far more sinister at play? Unlimited privilege, unthinkable betrayal, a crumbling empire built on power and secrets. This is Derrick Investigates, and I'm Derrick. Tonight, we step into a story that has gripped the nation, a web of privilege, mystery, and murder that shattered one of the South's most powerful families. A mother and son, found dead under chilling circumstances, a frantic 911 call, and a case that unraveled into something far darker than anyone could have imagined. What really happened that night? And how did a family once untouchable become the center of one of the most chilling scandals in modern history? Join me as we uncover the evidence, expose the secrets, and ask the questions that refuse to be silenced. If the unknown intrigues you as much as it does me, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Your support helps us shine a light on these haunting cases. To understand where it all leads, we must go back to the night of June 7th, 2021, when the Murdaugh legacy began to fall. The Murdaugh family name was one that commanded respect in South Carolina's Lowcountry. For nearly a century, they had been the gatekeepers of justice in the region, a dynasty of powerful attorneys whose influence stretched deep into the legal system. Their reach was unquestionable, their reputation untouchable. But beneath the polished exterior of wealth and privilege, something far darker lurked. At the heart of this legacy was Alex Murdaugh, a high-profile lawyer whose family had controlled the local prosecutor's office for generations. His wife, Maggie Murdaugh, was known as warm and sociable, a dedicated mother who embraced life in their world of privilege. Their youngest son, Paul, was a college student, outgoing, confident, but also no stranger to controversy. The family lived on their sprawling 1,770-acre estate in Islandton, South Carolina, a property known as Moselle. This land, vast and secluded, was a testament to the Murdaughs' standing in the community. But it was here, in the shadows of their own influence, that tragedy would strike. On the night of June 7th, 2021 at 10:07 p.m., a chilling 911 call was placed. The voice on the other end belonged to Alex Murdaugh. His words were frantic. "My wife and son have been shot badly." First responders arrived at Moselle minutes later. The scene they encountered was deeply unsettling. Near the dog kennels, two individuals lay lifeless: Maggie, 52, and Paul, 22. According to initial reports, both had sustained severe wounds. Paul's injuries suggested close-range impact, while Maggie was found a few feet away. The air was thick with tension. The estate, typically quiet at that hour, was now flooded with flashing lights and hushed voices. Investigators began their work, photographing, collecting evidence, piecing together the final moments of Maggie and Paul's lives. But the more they examined, the more questions arose. Why had Maggie and Paul been at the kennel so late? Who else had access to the property that night? And most importantly, who could have wanted them harmed? Paul, the youngest victim, was not just any college student. He was awaiting trial for a tragic 2019 boating accident that had resulted in the death of 19-year-old Mallory Beach. That case had already put the Murdaughs in the spotlight, drawing whispers of special treatment and buried evidence. On the night of February 24, 2019, Paul had reportedly been driving his family's boat under the influence of alcohol when it crashed into a bridge near Paris Island. 6 passengers had been aboard. Mallory Beach was thrown from the vessel and was found a week later, lifeless. The case led to scrutiny, with many questioning whether Paul had received preferential treatment due to his family's powerful legal ties. Could someone have sought revenge, or was there another reason Paul and Maggie were targeted? When examining cases like this, the past is rarely just the past. It often holds the key to the present. Crimes entangled with power and privilege rarely exist in isolation. They leave behind a trail of grievances, buried secrets, and unresolved conflicts. Who had the most to lose? Who had been wronged? Who carried a grudge that time couldn't erase? Justice doesn't always move at the same speed for everyone. And in families like the Murdaughs, influence can be a shield until the cracks begin to show. This time, no amount of power could stop what was coming. As the hours passed, detectives searched for clues. The estate was vast, making it difficult to determine the exact entry and exit points an unknown assailant might have used. The weapons used in the attack were of particular interest: 2 different firearms. Investigators noted that Paul and Maggie had been struck by separate weapons, leading to the unsettling question: was this the work of more than one person? Adding to the mystery, there were no immediate signs of forced entry. No security cameras at the kennels, no clear witnesses. What was clear, however, was that Maggie's phone had been moved after the attack, found discarded off the side of a road nearly a half-mile away. A possible clue, but also an anomaly. Who had moved it, and why? The secluded location of Moselle made it an unlikely target for a random act of violence. This was not a home in the middle of a bustling neighborhood. Whoever had been there that night had a reason to be. Was it someone the Murdaughs knew, or was something much bigger at play? For investigators, the puzzle was just beginning. The murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh sent shockwaves through South Carolina's Low Country, but the investigation into their deaths would prove to be even more shocking. What seemed like a tragic act of violence soon revealed a tangled web of secrets, deception, and years of unanswered questions. As investigators arrived at the crime scene on the night of June 7, 2021, they faced a disturbing sight. The bodies of Maggie and Paul lay outside the family's hunting estate, Moselle. Paul had been shot multiple times with a shotgun, while Maggie had been killed with an assault-style rifle. The use of 2 different firearms suggested something unusual. Was it multiple attackers, or was there another explanation? The crime scene, while seemingly straightforward, held contradictions that would leave investigators searching for answers. Authorities immediately looked into possible motives. Paul, who had been awaiting trial for the 2019 boating accident that killed Mallory Beach, had already brought unwanted scrutiny to the Murdaugh family. Could someone seeking justice have taken matters into their own hands? Or was there a more personal reason behind the killings? As law enforcement combed through evidence, one glaring fact stood out. Alex Murdaugh, Maggie's husband and Paul's father, had been the one to report the crime. He claimed to have found their bodies after returning home from visiting his mother. His 911 call was frantic, filled with distress. But as investigators reviewed his statements, inconsistencies began to surface. Surveillance footage and phone records painted a different picture of Alex's movements that night. Initially, he told police he had been away for hours. However, digital data from Paul's phone would contradict that. A video recovered from Paul's Snapchat account, recorded minutes before his death, captured the sound of Alex's voice in the background. This placed him at the scene far later than he had initially claimed. While investigators worked to piece together what happened that night, another discovery emerged that would turn the case upside down. Alex Murdaugh was hiding something that had nothing to do with the murders, but could explain everything. It was soon revealed that Alex had been embezzling millions of dollars from his law firm and clients. This financial misconduct spanned over a decade, involving fraudulent insurance payouts, stolen settlement funds, and a carefully constructed scheme to maintain his wealthy lifestyle. Just days before the murders, Alex had been confronted about missing funds from his firm, putting immense pressure on him. Could this have been his breaking point? Prosecutors later argued that Alex, desperate to shift attention away from his financial crimes, orchestrated the murders to create a distraction. For months, investigators built their case carefully. Ballistics, phone records, and testimony from those who knew the Murdaughs helped tighten the noose around Alex, but it was his own words that would ultimately betray him. During police interrogations, Alex initially claimed that he had never been near the kennels, where Maggie and Paul's bodies were found, on the night of the murders. However, the recovered video from Paul's phone placed him there at precisely 8:44 p.m. This revelation shattered Alex's alibi. As the trial approached, authorities uncovered yet another shocking twist. Months after the killings, Alex was involved in a bizarre roadside incident where he claimed he had been shot in the head in a botched assassination attempt. However, the supposed hitman, Curtis Smith, later revealed that Alex had hired him in an attempt to stage his own death, so that his surviving son, Buster, could collect a $10 million life insurance payout. This raised even more questions. Was Alex willing to go to any lengths to escape his crumbling reality? By the time Alex Murdaugh stood trial in early 2023, the case had gripped the nation. The prosecution laid out a meticulous case, highlighting Alex's financial fraud, his inconsistent alibi, and the forensic evidence that placed him at the crime scene. Alex took the stand in his own defense, a rare and risky move. He admitted to lying about his whereabouts on the night of the murders, but maintained that he was innocent. The defense argued that the police had rushed to judgment, failing to consider other possible suspects. However, the evidence was overwhelming. On March 2, 2023, after just a few hours of deliberation, the jury found Alex Murdaugh guilty of the murders of Maggie and Paul. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Even with Alex behind bars, the Murdaugh saga isn't entirely over. The case unearthed a deep history of corruption, power, and influence that had allowed the family to operate above the law for decades. Investigations into the Murdaugh family's past are ongoing, including re-examinations of other suspicious deaths linked to them, such as the 2015 death of Stephen Smith and the 2018 fatal fall of their housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield. This case serves as a chilling reminder of how power, when left unchecked, can lead to devastating consequences. What do you think about this case? Was justice served, or are there still secrets yet to be uncovered? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Just when it seemed like the case was stalled and questions continued to pile up, a breakthrough came. A shocking piece of evidence emerged, changing the trajectory of the investigation forever. On August 11, 2021, an anonymous tip came through a confidential hotline. A local source, unfamiliar with the case details, described a key piece of information that had been overlooked by the authorities. The night Maggie and Paul were murdered, a strange vehicle had been spotted driving away from the Murdaugh estate, one that was never reported before. It seemed like an innocent lead at first, but what followed sent chills through the entire investigation team. Authorities, who had initially believed the murders to be the work of an outsider with a vendetta against the Murdaughs, now had to entertain a far darker possibility. Alex Murdaugh, long considered the grieving husband and father, had begun to appear more and more suspicious with each new revelation. The timing of the murders, coupled with mounting evidence of Alex's financial troubles, began to paint a different picture. The motive that investigators once believed was tied to family grudges or revenge now seemed to be far more personal. As detectives pieced together Alex's financial history, they uncovered millions of dollars in embezzled funds from his law firm. He was under investigation for a string of fraudulent activities that had been kept under wraps for years. Just days before the murders, Alex was confronted by his colleagues about these missing funds. The immense pressure to cover up his crimes, combined with his ever-growing debt, was enough to drive anyone to desperation. But for Alex, the stakes were higher. The Murdaugh legacy, a name synonymous with power and influence, was crumbling. Yet even with this growing financial pressure, investigators still lacked the key piece of evidence that would make Alex's involvement undeniable. It was a breakthrough in digital forensics that would turn the tide, the recovery of a video from Paul's phone. In the final moments of his life, Paul had been recording a Snapchat video from the dog kennels, a location where the murders would soon unfold, and in the background, faint but unmistakable, was the voice of Alex Murdaugh. The video's timestamp was a damning revelation. It placed Alex at the scene of the crime, contradicting his earlier statements about being miles away at his mother's house. The inconsistency in his alibi now stood exposed. For the first time, investigators were able to see Alex not just as a grieving father, but as someone with an intricate web of lies that he could no longer untangle. Just when it seemed like Alex's involvement was all but confirmed, another bombshell hit: the discovery of a staged hitman incident. Months after the murders, Alex claimed he had been ambushed and shot in a botched roadside attack. This bizarre attempt to make it look like an assassination sparked even more suspicion. It soon emerged that Alex had orchestrated the entire thing, not as a victim, but as a desperate attempt to stage his own death in an effort to collect a $10 million life insurance payout. He had hired a hitman, Curtis Smith, to kill him, but the plan had gone horribly wrong. Curtis later admitted to being part of the staged shooting, but the question remained: was this part of a larger plot to avoid facing the consequences of his actions? As the details came to light, the timeline of Alex's financial and personal troubles grew more complicated. Investigators were left with one chilling question: could the Murdaugh murders have been an attempt to divert attention away from Alex's massive financial collapse? Was Maggie and Paul's death a calculated move to destroy his family and legacy, while buying him time to escape the repercussions of his wrongdoings? But even with the mounting evidence against him, there were still gaps in the story. Who were the mysterious figures that Alex might have involved in the cover-up? Were there others who helped him pull the strings behind the scenes? And could Alex have been acting under duress from someone else entirely, someone with a far greater agenda? These unanswered questions added an element of suspense that kept investigators and the public gripped as they awaited his trial. By the time Alex Murdaugh was arrested and charged, the case had escalated from a tragic family murder into a much darker tale of greed, lies, and manipulation. The once powerful Murdaugh family, whose influence had been untouchable for generations, was now under scrutiny from all sides. With the clock ticking toward the trial, the question remained: would Alex Murdaugh be able to maintain his facade of innocence, or would the weight of his own deception finally lead to his downfall? The Murdaugh case was one of shocking twists and deep-seated deception. While the trial answered many questions, others still lingered. With Alex Murdaugh convicted for the murders of his wife, Maggie, and son, Paul, the case became a stark example of how power, privilege, and crime can intersect in ways that challenge public trust in the justice system. Proving intent in criminal cases, especially those involving high-profile individuals, is often more complex than just presenting evidence. Public perception, media narratives, and long-standing influence can shape both investigations and court proceedings. In Murdaugh's case, the prosecution not only had to prove what happened, but also establish why. Did he act with calculated intent, or were his actions the result of desperation and mounting pressure? Beyond the legal aspects, the case also highlighted the psychology of high-stakes decision-making. When financial ruin, legal troubles, and personal crises collide, rationality can give way to extreme actions. Whether an act is premeditated or driven by panic is often central to determining culpability. Ultimately, the court found Alex Murdaugh guilty, seeing him as the mastermind behind his family's destruction. But the broader implications of his downfall continue to raise questions about power, deception, and the fragile nature of trust, even within one's own family. The Murdaugh case has reached its conclusion, but its impact will be felt for years to come. The trial, the evidence, the shocking twists, it all led to a verdict that many had both anticipated and feared. Alex Murdaugh, once a respected lawyer and a pillar of his community, now sits behind bars, convicted of the murders of his wife, Maggie, and son, Paul. As of March 2025, he is serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Justice has been served, but the scars left behind run deep. The case shattered the illusion of power and privilege as a shield against accountability, proving that no one is truly untouchable. Yet, the deeper questions remain. How far will someone go to protect their legacy? And how many warning signs do we overlook before the truth finally comes to light? Thank you for watching and being part of our community here at Derrick Investigates. Your support allows us to continue exploring the most perplexing cases, giving voice to the unanswered questions that still linger. If this case resonated with you, make sure to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe with the bell icon turned on. Together we can keep these voices alive and shine a light on the forgotten. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and never stop searching for the truth. I'm Derrick, and I'll be back soon with another investigation.